If we updated this, it would be much worse. Australia was on fire last year. You see a lot of it in Australia. Probably most of the United States, the southern Midwest and out to the west, was in drought. So these are changing very rapidly in the last few years. Small island nations are particularly vulnerable. Sea level rise because of the thermal expansion of water, plus partly because of the melting of snow, has raised the sea levels around the world. And some of the islands are very low and very small, so easy for them to get flooded. One literally flooded out. The other is a saltwater intrusion into the freshwater vents. And so they got problems from both sides, just literally being washed out like here, when the water that they would pump is not drinkable anymore. So I started to work with Pacific Islanders on a climate change advocacy group. And when I started to form the group, one of my thoughts was that this is a really serious problem that we should start getting ready for. As I work with Pacific Islanders, it changed because they say, oh yeah, that's happening. You know, my family had to move inland, or so they've been thinking about it already and feeling it, that they know from their own experience, their family experience of farms being washed out, that sort of thing. So it really, working with the Pacific Islander community here in the South Bay, Long Beach area, made me much more aware of the time sense and the urgency. It's not a bad thing that's coming, it's something that is already hitting. And I learned that from them. Here is the requisite cute kid picture. This gets from part of on the islands in Indonesia. Some places have to relocate, moving inland. The very small places have been really reluctant to take it up, but now are recognizing that they may have to abandon their nations, that it may not be livable, and are in the early stages of kind of what-if negotiations with nearby places. I think Australia, New Zealand, some of the places in Asia. If we have to leave our country, can we find some way to come to your country? So the kids do it in a cute way, but it is a really serious thing. So the Pacific Island nations are the most vocal advocates for doing something about the problem in international forums. They are doing everything they can to adapt to it on their islands, but they are also making backup plans to leave if they have to. Because if you just go to another country, it's a problem. Like we have lots of refugees in the world, and it's always a very hard thing for the refugees, and also hard for the accepting countries. So they see this coming, and they're trying to think about how can we and our hosts deal with it in a rational way. And people from about 5 or 6 islands got together and built some traditional boats and did a tour throughout the Pacific using traditional methods, making stops, figuring that because of the lengths, the distances that they went, and the kinds of boats that they would get publicity. And their point every time was the environment, with a high focus on climate change, global warming. We talked about other things, but that was a big thing that we wanted to learn about. So the Pacific Island, the low-lying nations, Pacific Islands, other places, are the places that will be hurt the most in terms of percentage of the population. They may have to, not be 100%. Okay. There's about 2 million people in the Pacific, so it's a small population that we hit very hard. Another impact is flooding, both from sea level rise, storm surges, and then floods coming from the other way. And that is in the coastal settlements. Cities develop on deltas because the soil is rich. It's the perfect connection between going inland on boats and connecting with the rest of the world on ships. Okay, so it's a great location for transportation, things going in and out, soil, everything start. So you get enormous populations on delta areas. They are also highly vulnerable. So these are the places where more than 1 million people are expected to be displaced based on different scenarios of temperature rise and sea level rise. So that in numbers, the big concentrations would be in Asia and South Asia. But we also see the Mississippi. We've already seen that. Right? We've seen New Orleans here, the Nile River, Great Hall, I don't know if anybody from got family in Tabasco province? Next to Yucatan, that was about half underwater about 6 years ago, it got flooded. So there's places where it's going to be very bad. So in numbers of people, not percentages of population, those are the places that will get hit very hard. And those are the major cities, those are the mega cities of the world. You know, there's cities that you never heard of are twice as big as Los Angeles. Really, so very, very large populations. And another way to look at it is responsibility for greenhouse gas emissions and then the health effects of actually mortality. And I think you've seen a map. You start with a map that looks like the shape, and then you use a computer to adjust the area to the thing you want to show. So the bigger the area, the bigger whatever is being measured. So the top one is the cumulative carbon dioxide emissions over the last, that was 50 to 2000. And you can see that the big one, the United States, Germany, France, England, China, Russia, Japan, the industrialized countries. And you can see, like Africa's become very tiny, it's not a big emitter. Okay. The bottom one is mortality rates from 4 health effects that are exacerbated by climate change: malaria, malnutrition, diarrhea, and floods. Okay, so mortalities that can be attributed to climate change. You get a sense of like the kind of thing that's going to kill people. And you see that it's, the two maps are the opposite in many cases. Suddenly, the United States we've finally lost weight. We found solution, make a map of how hard we're going to get hit. But you can see Africa, South Asia, huge impacts in terms of just mortality, not just illness, but people dying from it. Okay, so 2 reverse maps, responsibility and then harm in terms of death. So the UN report, Chairman summed it up as equity issues too. So what can you do about it? When you talk about this issue, there's 2 terms that come up: mitigation and adaptation. If you're in environmental studies, it's a little bit different from the way mitigation is usually used. In most environmental work, mitigation means cleaning up the problem. You dump something, mitigation is cleaning up. Or you're going to do something, so balance it off. You're going to put in a road, put in a sound barrier. In climate change issue, mitigation focuses on reducing emissions or reducing carbon dioxide levels. So either reduce the emissions one way or another, or stop cutting down trees and things that already have carbon dioxide locked up. Adaptation means what do you do about the consequences? How do you cope with a wide range of consequences that come up? And then there's some things that do both. So there's a wider, so the general principle, less emissions, general principle, deal with the problems. One thing is that even if we went to 0 greenhouse gases today, what we have now is locked into the climate system, and it'll have effects for a long time. So we're already committed to a considerable amount of global warming. Okay, so it's not something that it's going to get, we can suddenly decide, hey, wake up and do something about it and it'll be okay. It takes work, it takes hard work now to do something. So we're going to have to deal with this side no matter what, for what's already committed, and that side to keep it from getting worse and worse. And you can see, you probably know some of these already, you've probably studied some of these, you've heard about it. So there's things that sound like, how do you remove the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere? Very big and abstract, right? But there's many concrete things. We talk about what do you do about floods and diseases. It's very, very specific things. You do many, many things. Some of them we do already, and we need to do more of them. Okay, so a lot of these things are a matter of scale. Scale, prevalence, and deployment of different kinds of activities. Any questions, comments? Okay. What do we have to do? How much do we have to reduce it? The IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Jordan, they do not make